Alright, today's gonna be sort of episode 5.5. It's also gonna be a double upload day. But for 5.5, I'm gonna be just doing some minor additions and sort of fixes to the common system we already have. So yeah. Right. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to add collision groups to the game. What those are is that they allow certain objects to collide with each other and not collide with each other. So for example, you'll see that my character can sort of collide with these dummies, which could pose a problem in the future for flinging and things like that. Because if something accidentally happens and I touch the dummy with a great amount of force, then I could get flung on accident. So the way to avoid that is by adding collision groups. So if I go to model and collision groups, I can add a group called players, like so. And so we can say players, we don't want the players to collide with other players, so we can check that off. Now we want to add these dummies to the collision group. So we can make a script in service called collision handler, like so. You can just name this anything you want, but I'm just gonna call this collision handler. And another thing, in addition with the collision groups, is I want to add sort of I want to organize the workspace a little bit. So we can add a folder here called world, and I can move all of these dummies to the world. And we'll add another folder here called live. So this folder just contains all the live things like my player, other players, and dummies. So we can add them there. And we can also add a folder called hitboxes and effects, like so. Now, since we did that, now we need to go to our weapon, our fist weapon, and we need to change the place where we parent the hitbox clone to workspace.world.hitboxes and change our overlap params too, like so. So now if we were to play the game and punch, you'll see that the hitbox gets parented to the hitbox folder in here. I can open this quick enough, there we go, like so. Now, we also want to parent the player to live, or the character to live as well. Because you see we're still in the workspace folder, not this folder. So, to do that, we can go over here, and we can start initializing our variables. So we're going to do a player.characterAdded function, like so. And we can say if player.character then, and we can add a function down here, a method called characterAdded. So the reason we do both of these is because this checks if the player or the character is already there. But let's say if the character is not there and they need to load. So this checks for when the character loads. So that's why we do that. And now we can also add a function called characterAdded. So you see in the characterAdded function, there's automatically a parameter passed that Roblox gives you called character. So because of that, we can remove the function part right here and just say characterAdded. Now we can also do characterAdded right here. And then we can get run service. And we want to wait just a slight second before it parents the character. So we'll do heartbeat wait. And we can parent the character to workspace.world.live, like so. So if we play the game, you'll see that the character isn't paired to workspace anymore, but he's in live. And everything still works as normal. This is just how most games organize their workspace. Alright, now we'll add collision groups to the character and the dummies. So if you recall earlier, we already made the collision groups in here, but now we need to apply them to everything that's related to the player or a character model. So we can say for underscore comma v and character get descendants do, like so. And let's annotate this because we know it's going to be a model, so we can say get descendants. Oops, there we go. We can say if v is a base part, or v is a mesh part, or v is a union operation. So we want to make sure to check for every possible thing that could have collision group in it. So I'm going to say v.collision group is equal to players, like so. So if we play the game and we open our player and we click on anything, you can see that our collision group is players. And we also need to make sure that this is also set to players too. So we'll say if v is a part or v is a part, then. So now if we play, we'll see that everything in our character is set to players. Like so. And for this, we can ignore the this part not being set to players because the hand collide is already off for this. So that'll be fun. Because it won't collide with it anyways. Now, since we made this players, we also need to make the dummies collision group players too. Because this is already set to default. So one way we could do this is just change this to players, which is going to take an extremely long time. Or another way we could do this is say underscore comma player and well, before we do that, I'm just going to add a character added to this. We can say if player.character, then that's about the do not repeat yourself principle. So we can say local function handle character added player, like so. Now we can just copy and paste that into there, and then we can say handle character added. We can also say here handle character added here. So the reason we do this is because let's say a player is already in the game and this method doesn't call. So we can check it twice to make sure that it ensures that the character gets parented and things like that. And now we can handle the collision groups for non-players. So we can say for underscore comma v in workspace.world.live get children do. If not, players get player from character v. So it's checking if it's a player or not, if the character can correspond to a player in the game. So if it isn't, then we can just do this, like so. Now we can make a function here called, let's see, called local function handle collision groups, like so, and we can call this character, and that's going to handle that. Handle collision groups character, and in here we can also say handle collision groups v, which v in this case is the character model or the dummies model. So now if we play the game, we get an error. Okay, let's see what this is. Attempt to an external character. We didn't pass the parameters in here. Okay, now we just add a player here and player here, and we should be fine. Let's see what else. If player.character handle character added. Here we go. Instead of doing this, we need to say handle collision groups and v. Here we go. Now if we play the game, we'll see that all of these are set to player, and now we can't collide with these. However, we can still punch these things. We can still punch the dummies, but we can't collide with them. So once again, this will just prevent flinging and unintended things like that. Now next up is we're just going to make it to where you can't attack or do any actions when you die, because we don't want that occurring in the game, obviously. So And here we can say, let's see. Alright, so we can make a function called isDead. So we can say local function is, actually no, we don't need to do that. We can go to our collision handler and we can, let's rename this, or we can go to combat service here, there we go, combat system. And now we can also check for when the character is added. So we can go down here and we can, or we can go right here, players.player added connect function, player. Or if underscore comma player and players get player do. Now we can say character added. If player.character, then handle character added. Player.character. And let's just copy this. Alright. Now in here we can say local status folder equals character wait for child status, comma map.huge. We do wait for child because what if the status folder hasn't actually loaded in yet? We wait for child because we know it's gonna be there, but we don't know when it's gonna be there. So this is gonna work. Now we can say local humanoid equals character wait for child humanoid. And then we can say humanoid.died connect function. So he's only gonna die once, so we can just say once, like so. And then we can say StateService, which we have up here. Add state character comma dead, like so. Now this will handle that. Now if we play the game, we will see that whenever the character dies, there's gonna be a folder added to status called died or dead. Now we can use this in our input script to just, we can say if status folder find first child dead, then return. So none of these things in here will run if he's dead. So we can say if status folder find first child dead, then return. Or even better, we can disconnect this update function. So we can say local render or local step connection equals no. Step connection equals that. And we can say step connection disconnect, like so. And step connection equals no, like so. So now if we play the game, and we start punching, but if we die, you see that we can't punch and we can't block or do anything like that. And if we respawn, we can punch again, like so. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of these print statements here, so we can just comment all of these out. Like so. And another thing I'm going to do is add stunning checks to the combat system. So in the previous video, we didn't actually check if the player was stunned when they're attacking. So we can just add a comma here and we can say stunned, like so. And that should be good. Another thing we can do is we can check if the player is stunned once their hitbox starts trying to detect. So we can say if StateService.checkState character comma stunned, then return. So if they're stunned when they are while the hitbox is being made, then we'll just return end because we don't want anything to happen. Because this will cause things like players hitting each other at the same time and things like that. We only want a single player to be able to hit another person once. We don't want them clashing with each other. And we'll check over here. Yep, this shouldn't affect anything for the game. And that should be good. And let's see if there's anything else we want to do. Another thing we want to do is we want to add the block reactions or the block shrug. Because you notice in the animation resources that I left in the description. There was something called block reaction, Shrug 1 and Shrug 2. So we're going to use these to actually make the dummy have a sort of animation when they get hit while they're blocking. As you see right now, there's no animation. So in order to do that, we can go to our hit types and blocked. And we can copy the same code right here that we had for block break. But instead, we'll notice that the block reactions is 1 and 2. So we can randomize between 2 different animations. So we can, let's put this in a different thread. And then we can say local random shrug equals math.random 1, 2. So it's going to randomize between 1 and 2. Now we can say weapon used block reactions toString random shrug, and we can play it. Otherwise, we can just say let's add in the assets folder here. We can say assets.animations weapon used block reactions shrug 1 toString 1, or yeah, toString random shrug, like so. And over here, we also want to fix that. We have that shrug and 1. Now if we play the game, you'll notice that we have an animation added. So if we, let's see what happened. Animations modules, load animation. Okay. So in our dummy, we also want to load the fist animations. So animation modules that load animations, humanoid, comma dot fist. So this will load the animations that we need, which contain the shrug and things like that. Because previously we only loaded the character animation. So let's do the same thing for the other dummies. Oh, these don't have core. Okay, we'll be fine then. Alright. So now you notice if we play it, you'll see that we have the shrug animations loading. Like so. Alright. Another thing we want to do is we want to make the character be frozen and have a little EndLag on the last hit. Because right now, you'll see that the player can freely move on less than 1. We don't really want that. We want them to have a little bit of EndLag and for them to be frozen in place on their less than 1, if we so want to. So in the hit types, we can go to default, and we can add on to the last hit thing right here. We can say freezing in place, or this would be just called EndLag. So we can add a status to this called, let's say, NoMove. And we want this to be about like 1 and 2 tenths of a second. And we'll also add a state here called stunned, or check state, add state. And we want to add the state called no attack, because we don't want them to be able to attack within this time frame, but we want them to be able to block and things like that. So we'll add something called no punch. However, because we added that state, we also need to add this up here. So we'll say no punch, then do that. Now we can go to our input, and we can add onto our little state handler status updater here. And we can say if status folder find first child no punch, or we can say no move, then final jump power equals 0, final walk speed equals 0 as well. And I also forgot to add the stun status in here. So while they're stunned, of course we don't want them to move or be able to jump. So add it like this. Another thing I want to note is, if you recall, Roblox reads their code from top to bottom. So knowing so, we want to make sure to prioritize which states come first. What I mean by that is if we were to add no move, or if we were to add stunned up here, because Roblox reads it from the top to bottom, the stun status will be overridden by the attacking status. If that makes any sense. So because of that, we'll want to add stun as the last sort of state that we want to be updated for the character. Now, if we play the game, you'll see that on the last hit, the player doesn't stop moving because they didn't hit anything, so that'll be fine. But if they hit something, you'll see that they can't move for 1 and 2 tenths of a second, and then they can move again. Like so. And so that's going to pretty much wrap up this sort of intermission video, 5.5. So mainly today what we did was we fixed it to where when you die, you won't be able to punch or block or anything like that, by adding a folder to status called dead whenever the character dies on the server. And also we added block shrug animations using the code that we already had for block break, but rather we just added a math.random to randomize between 1 and 2 block shrugs. And we also added a collision handler, which just makes it to where players can't collide with dummies, which can prevent things like flinging and unnecessary issues that we might face in the future. And that pretty much wraps up this video. The next video that will be released today is going to focus on sprinting and dashing, mainly movement. So yeah.